One thing that religion understands well is the importance of what we see. One thing religion does well is provide visual images on which to focus our awareness, visual images that activate our imagination, visual images to help bring stories alive, visual images to make spiritual teachings concrete. Now, even as I say this, I'm aware that some of us have visual impairments which make images less useful or significant to us. I'm also aware that some of us are listening to the sermon as a podcast with no visuals available. But remember that most world religions are effective because they offer different ways to engage through all 6 of our senses: hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, seeing, as well as perceiving through our intuition. But today, with a specific end purpose in mind, which you will soon discover, we are going to focus for a few minutes on the power of religious imagery. From Hindu statues to Roman Catholic stained glass windows, from Islamic calligraphy to the Sikh sword, from the Jewish Star of David to the Mormon angel Moroni, from a neo-pagan earth-based altar to a cross of Christianity, from the Norse god Thor's hammer to Taoism's yin-yang symbol, from Zoroastrianism's Varavahar to Unitarian Universalism's flaming chalice. Religion does a great job of providing visual images on which to focus our awareness, visual images to activate our imagination, to help us bring stories alive, and to make spiritual teachings concrete. Buddhism is no exception and offers many different visuals, from impermanent sand mandalas created by monks to statues of the Buddha, from the wheel of Dharma to the Bodhi tree. One particular powerful form of Buddhist imagery is the tanka. According to Christie's Auction House, which has a seasoned expertise with tankas, a tanka is a Tibetan painting using ground mineral pigments painted onto cotton or silk. It functions as one of the primary meditation tools in Buddhist spiritual practice. A tanka usually depicts a central Buddhist deity or teacher, surrounded by the associated gods and lineage figures in that specific tradition, and it describes events or myths attributed to important Buddhist religious teachers. The viewer accrues merit and makes spiritual progress when they look at the image and meditate on that imagery associated with a specific Buddhist teaching. It's like a visual map that takes you into the heart, the essence of that teaching. Now, the word tanka originates from the combination of two different words, two different Tibetan words, tan, which means flat, and ka, which means painting. So simply put, a tanka is a flat painting. But A tanka is so much more than that. The New World Encyclopedia tells us that originally, tankas, sometimes called scroll paintings, became popular among traveling monks because they could be easily rolled up and transported from monastery to monastery, either on foot or on mule. Tankas are a precise, and that's an important word for us to remember, a precise form of sacred art. To Buddhists, this is holy. The religious symbolism must be in accordance with very strict guidelines. The artist must be properly trained and have sufficient religious understanding, knowledge, and background in order to create an accurate and appropriate tanka. Religious rules must be followed that are specified in the Buddhist scriptures and cover such things as proportions, shape, color, body position, and even hand positions or mudra in order to personify correctly the Buddha or deity. Now, I'm going to invite us for a moment to see how a tanka brings a Buddhist teaching story to life. Stay with me, because I'm going to very soon bring this story quite close to home, as close as this sanctuary on Alluvial Avenue, and to a crisis we face. This is a famous 18th century Tibetan tanka. It was painted sometime in the 1700s. We don't know where, but we know it came from the Kham region of Tibet. According to Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, this tanka depicts the somewhat scandalous and sensationalistic story of a Buddhist monk named Gantapa. Now, Gantapa was a devout practitioner of meditation, and Gantapa entered into a forbidden union of love with a young lady, whereby they both became liberated from samsara, the endless cycle of life. Then the two returned to the city from the remote forest retreat where they'd been meditating. There, as they enter the city, they're confronted by a jealous and hate-filled king and his corrupt court. Fearing for their very lives, Gantapa creates a flood, and you can see that flood pouring out of the jar, to keep the king at bay while Gantapa and his beloved escape into the sky, and you can see them there up flying in the sky, where they become enlightened spiritual beings united for eternity. But back on earth, the floodwaters keep rising and rising, threatening the survival of the king and the court. Feeling a touch of mercy, Gantapa tells the people to pray to Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Avalokiteshvara, and you can see the figure there, appears, the symbol of compassion, and raises his right arm to halt the raging floodwaters and save humanity from destruction. All the while, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, watches over them from the upper corner from the sun, where that Bodhisattva of wisdom sits, a presence that urges everyone to act in the world wisely and mindfully. So, jump ahead some 300 years to 2007. World-renowned Bay Area artists Era Hamaji and Donald Farnsworth decide to transform this ancient story and this 18th century tanka into a story and tanka for today. A story and tanka that calls upon each of us, indeed calls upon all of humanity to face the challenge of present times with wisdom and compassionate action. Based on the original 18th century tanka, they created a contemporary wall-sized tanka 6 feet wide by 9 feet tall. As described by longtime church member Gay Amond, this new tanka is called the Deluge tanka. We see in this new contemporary tanka the deluge, a flood pouring down, the rising floodwaters of our human-created climate change crisis. And we see the now androgynous Buddhist figure of Avalokiteshvara, the symbol of enlightened compassion, pointing towards the oncoming environmental disaster with a hand raised to stop the oncoming flood. It's as if this ancient being has returned to earth with a new message for us today, saying, look at this. Look at the destruction you are creating. How will we stop this? In this newly adapted story, the enlightened lovers have already escaped into the clouds, into eternal bliss. And instead of the bodhisattva of wisdom watching the earth from the sun as it did in the original 18th century tapestry, we see the sun now surrounded by a ring, an open sea, and the number 2, showing us a CO2 alert, a carbon dioxide alert, and its undeniable impact on climate change. The original 18th century depiction of the eternally entwined lovers in this contemporary tapestry has been transformed into a floating red and black scarf that you can see in the sky. And that scarf follows the scientific chart of temperature and carbon dioxide increases over the last 1,000 years, rising sharply on the right in the accelerating climate crisis. Since 2008, this remarkable new tanka has hung in our Alluvial Avenue sanctuary on the left side of our side wall. If you all turn, you can see that original tapestry, that tanka, since 2008. So for 17 years, this remarkable tanka, this tapestry, has hung here, reflecting Unitarian Universalism's value of interdependence, a call to respect and honor the interdependent web of all existence, a call to preserve and protect the great web of life. For 17 years, this remarkable tanka for our times has been on temporary loan to our church, on loan from longtime church member Gay Amond as a memorial tribute to Gay's late husband, Alan, and his own enlightened compassion. But as of today, the loan of this environmentally aware tanka comes to an end. As of today, a new chapter for this tanka begins. As Gay Amond herself writes, I, Gayle Miles Amond, current owner of the Deluge tanka, have the pleasure of permanently donating this tapestry to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno. Gay continues. By this gift, I wish to honor my husband, Alan E. Amond, with whom I joined the original Fresno Unitarian Fellowship in 1955. Together, we helped the fellowship grow into today's Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno on East Alluvial Avenue. We were designated life members before Alan died in 2005. And although he never saw the deluge tanka installed in the UUCF sanctuary, I believe he would treasure its artistic beauty and its cautionary symbolic story about the threats of climate change. 17 years ago, when Gay first loaned this tapestry to us, she spoke these words in this sanctuary. A tanka is a portable scroll or painting to guide meditation. Here, this tapestry invites us to meditate on enlightened compassion. I think that the message from this tanka is that we will have to have more than compassion for our earth, our planet. We will have to be enlightened about how we are going to influence, mitigate, and transform climate change. Dear ones, the tide is rising, and so are we. The task is mighty, and as Gay knows, so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.